Billions. He is Congressman James Sensenbrenner of Wisconsin, and he's the ranking Republican of the House Select Energy Independence and Global Warming Committee. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Megan. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. So this all stems back to the Supreme Court basically upheld the EPA's right to regulate certain gases and emissions. And now the EPA appears ready to do that with respect to methane gas that cows belch out when they're sitting out on the field. And now the EPA could make farmers pay for that gas?
You're right. $175 a year for each head of dairy cattle, $80 a head for each head of beef cattle per year, and also $20 a head per pig if you're a pig farmer. This cow fart tax shows how outrageous the whole global warming and climate change debate is. And it's going to hit everybody directly at the supermarket when they buy beef or pork or milk. Those prices are going to go up because it's going to be that much more expensive to produce these essential food commodities.
Now, Congressman, I saw you with a straight face just brush right over that term. You know what you called it. Here at America's Newsroom, we're referring to it as the cow gas tax.
Mm-hmm.
So much more civilized. But
well,
it
might be more civilized. The EPA calls it digestive gases. We all call those farts.
This is not feeling like a career high for me. Let me ask you though, Congressman, because it is serious business, because if those are big numbers you mentioned, $175 a head of cattle, $20 a head of for pigs, and so on down the line. That's a lot of dough for farmers. They don't wind up eating that; they wind up passing that along.
Sure, and it's going to hit everybody at the supermarket. Now, I wonder if the EPA is going to say you can get an exemption from this tax if you put a catalytic converter on each end of the cow. I wonder what the Humane Society would say about that.
And so what will happen as a practical matter? I mean, if they really do try to crack down on this, they say that these gases account for something like 20% of the methane gas out there, or the emissions out there. If this happens and this tax is imposed, as a practical matter, how is it going to affect the average Joe in middle America?
Well, the average Joe, when he goes to the supermarket and buys any kind of dairy product or beef or pork, is going to end up paying through the nose to pay for the cow fart tax. Or you're just going to see these types of essential food commodities disappear from the shelf. This, in my opinion, shows how ridiculous the whole debate on climate change and global warming has become when you give a non-elected agency like the EPA the power to impose a tax on cow flatulence. I've been fighting this whole business all along in the Congress, and we're going to be voting on a whole package of cap and tax regulations probably later on this month. The American public ought to see that this is no laughing matter when this gets translated into costs at the supermarket and inflation.
Well, and it also doesn't comport with President Obama's promise that he wouldn't be imposing taxes on people who earn less than $200,000 a year. But pretty much everybody in this country, not everyone, but pretty much everyone, eats some form of dairy product or meat product and shops for that when they go to the grocery store. And if they impose this kind of tax on these farmers, you can bet they're going to be paying for it. Let me ask you, though, about alternatives. If we accept that these methane gases are bad for the environment, I know that there's a question about that, but if you accept that, I read an article that said, for example, this Stonyfield farm, they make this popular yogurt. They've done this thing where they're just feeding their cows alfalfa, flax, and grasses, and that actually has decreased the methane gas coming out of these taxes significantly and has increased the omega-3, which is good for you, in the cow's milk. How about pressing the farmers to do more things like that as opposed to taxing them?
Well, the EPA doesn't care in imposing the cow fart tax on what is fed to the cattle. It is just a flat tax per head. So this product is going to have the same type of price increases as a result of the tax as milk that comes from cows that aren't fed this special diet.
Interesting. Well, Congressman, I think you've set the record for that word on our show, and I appreciate you coming out and talking about it. It's easy to laugh about, but as you point out, it's really no laughing matter. All the best to you.
Well, the silly season has arrived in Washington.
Well put.
Yeah.
Bill?
So he did drop.